Okay, so good morning. So first I want to repeat as my colleagues that it's really an honor to be invited to talk here in this tribute to Gaspar. I only met Gaspar about 12 years ago when my group started collaborating with LIP Computing in the EG project. And what I want to say is that I'm very proud that we managed to keep this collaboration, increase the collaboration with LIP Computing, with the team of George, and we really hope to continue this activity and follow the spirit of Gaspar. So the other thing is that I'm a computer scientist, so I will try not to go very much in detail. There are some details in the slides, so I'll try to refocus a bit, to try to go more at the level of the user communities. So basically, that was suggested to talk is, the spirit of Gaspar has been collaboration. We are really sowing this collaboration here. And one of the things that you need for collaboration is understanding what the user communities needs. So we have infrastructure, we have software, we have resources, but it's very important that we try to talk in the same language with the different user communities that are opening to the use of the distributed infrastructure that we have. So very briefly, I want to say that the development of this computing infrastructure for research has led new opportunities for research. There's a new set of communities that are participating. There are free riders, alone researchers that are having the opportunity to access larger scale resources. And we have to provide the requirements or implement the requirements that are needed for those researchers to access and use efficiently and comfortably and conveniently the resources that we have. At the same time, there's a lot of development in ICT, in infrastructure, information and communication technologies that are being adopted. So, in this story of collaboration with LIP, there are several projects that have some impact. So what I wanted to show here, 7 actions or a summary or some hints or highlights of several projects in which I had the pleasure to participate in, which we dedicated an important effort on understanding the user communities and the requirements that they have. So I put the links of the public documents in which we have the formal requirement analysis, the list of what the user communities demanded and how we try to provide support. So starting from the Spanish Network for E-Science and going through several European projects. Indigo, for example, was a joint project in which we have important collaboration with LIP. And finally, ending temporarily with AOC Synergy, which just started, and we will do the same. So as you can see, it's more than 100 use cases, and more than 12 different user communities that we identified and worked with along all these projects. So just to give you a hint of the kind of communities that are being accessing the infrastructure, this is the list of communities and use cases from the AOC Synergy. This project, European project, led by Ibergrid, that was mentioned by Isabel. As you can see, there are 4 different areas. There's observation, biomedicine, environment, and astrophysics, and different use cases. All these use cases have several points in common, but here are several different and specific requirements that we want to address. So, we did many analyses. So just as an example, in the case of the Indigo Data Cloud, it was the activity of user community management was coordinated by Jesus Marco, and I participated in the requirement analysis. There was we made an analysis that gave a level of detail to identify these close to 30 individual requirements that were needed by the user communities and should be provided by the infrastructure. So I just highlight several of them, like the capability of the infrastructure to adopt, to be flexible for the software required by the user. Those that have been using the grids from the very beginning know the difficulty of making, we were always adapting to the infrastructure, and that infrastructure should adapt to us. and that was one of the requirements. The problem of moving data and efficiently dealing with data, data-aware scheduling, big data analysis solutions, and the level of the coherent authentication. So all these requirements have been addressed. So what I wanted to show in this presentation very briefly is a view from some of the projects in which we were now starting of several, 4 topics in which we consider that are future or points in which effort is needed for dealing with what the end user require and the user communities for that. So we identify 4. One is quality and continuous deployment, the continuous development. What we mean there, I will show you later, is to facilitate the transition from development to production. So the integration of data and computing to make data access, data processing efficient. Advanced models, so we don't have to deal with the whole set of setting up of our resources, adapting our tools to a new paradigm, executing, and reproducible science. So one hint for each one. Continuous development and continuous integration. In industry, this is really the standard. So people develop code and immediately they can automatically validate, test, deploy and put it in production. This is something that we are really fostering in the last project. In Synergy, we have a quality, software quality activity led by LIP for this part. So this is something that is really demanded. Second point, the integration of data and computing. Accessing data requires moving data in many cases, but moving code where data is located is one of the important things that workflow systems should deal. So there are several approaches, several challenges that should be considered. Third, the programming models. So it's now the time to change from setting up an infrastructure that is like the infrastructure that we have, and forgetting about using the infrastructure. What we want is to have the user to be worried only about their program, their algorithm, their software, and nothing else. So there are approaches like the function as a service that are really fostering the use of the infrastructure as it will be an automatic black box underneath, and that's very important. So I have one hint, but I will not go into detail on that. And finally, reproducible on science. Reproducibility is really a challenge. There are many articles around saying that most of the results that we have published are not easy to reproduce. Despite that they are true, but the conditions in the way obtained they are not so clear. And having the possibility of executable papers, jointly code data and environment for reproducing the experiments is very important. There are tools that are being developed, protocols identified that should be pursued. So these 4 big challenges, I think, that are requirements that will be adapted. And I just want to end reminded that academia should focus also on what business ICT is doing for their big infrastructure and try to adopt the same protocols and standards of quality and leverage the collaborative tools that are available now, for developing distributed computing infrastructures and keeping the science goals. And I just want to end saying that we start this collaboration with LIP and Professor Gaspar Barreira when Vicente Hernandez was the former leader of my group, was active. He's severely ill, and it's a pity because he would love to be here because he was a good friend of Gaspar. And thank you very much for the attention.